Hi. So glad you came. So glad you're here. So glad you clicked on this video. My name is Lizzie and I do comedy and therapy together and I call it Hilarapy. And I'm going to tell you a bit about why I do that, what happened in my life to bring me to this point, and a bit about kind of what I do now. And maybe you want to come and spend some time with me. Maybe you don't. Maybe this can help you. Maybe it won't. Either way, we're going to get to know each other. Well, that's not strictly true. You're going to get to know me. And yeah, so if you arrived here completely cold because your friend sent you, I'll just tell you straight off the bat, I'm just going to shoot from the hip, share my story with you. But if you already know me, you've probably watched a few of my videos on Instagram, or you've been to a show, or you've done a course or something. Welcome. And I really appreciate you spending the time with me today. So, okay, I'm going to calm down because this is like, I'm going to share my soul with you. I'm going to share my soul. Not strictly true. No, it's true. I'm going to share it. So, yeah, okay. So, I've always loved comedy. Comedy was something that spoke to me from a young age. When I was 8 years old, I saw French and Saunders on the TV, and it's a sketch show, and if you're not familiar with British comedy, get involved because it's good. So French and Saunders, two women, and they would get dressed up and they would just take the mickey out of all these different films. They would do impressions, they would play themselves, they would play crazy different people, and it was just so funny. And I saw them and I thought, I want to do that job. I want to go to work, I want to be with my friends, and I want to laugh. That was kind of like the pinnacle of success would be to just mess around all day and laugh with my friends. And also laughing was a sign that everything was okay, because I grew up in a chaotic home. So when everyone was laughing, it was kind of like, okay, we can take a beat here. So comedy felt like safety, felt like joy, felt like freedom, felt like expansion and play, which is just beautiful. But, okay, and there's a but. As I said, I grew up in a chaotic home. My father was an alcoholic, drug addict, philanderer, gambler. I hope he doesn't watch this. Like, he's a lovely man, don't get me wrong. But it was difficult for my mum, who was also running from her own trauma. So they both experienced a lot of trauma. I mean, I think I'm talking about the human race when I say that. I think being alive is traumatic. The very nature of being alive is traumatic. That's kind of a belief of mine. I think we all go through trauma and loss at some point, but I digress. So my story. So my mum left my dad when I was 3, and I grew up with my mum, and she was struggling with her own emotional chaos. She would catastrophize, she would get big emotionally, and she was also drinking and, doing what they did in the 80s while we rolled around in the back seat without seatbelts. It was fabulous, nothing wrong with it. But I grew up thinking that I would find my escape through drinking and then recreational drugs. And pretty soon I was losing myself because I was rejecting who I was on a fundamental level. Right? There's all different aspects to that. So I couldn't really do my thing of following my dream and doing comedy because I had quite a big experience of not feeling safe. So when I started to do comedy in the comedy clubs, I didn't feel safe because it felt like the stories that I was bringing forward were really big. Now, a part of my story is that at the age of 19, I went traveling. And I went to 5 different countries. Well, that was the plan, to go to 5 different countries, be away for a year. And this was my plan. I'll go away for a year and then I'll know what to do with my life. But the problem was I went away not well. I was smoking lots of cannabis or wacky backy. I was drinking. I was pretty much going along with whatever was going on. And I went to India, Singapore, and then when I got to Thailand, I ended up having this huge breakdown. Now, if you see my TED talk, I explain a little bit of it there, but it's quite robotic in a TED talk, isn't it? Because you've got to stick to the script. So anyway, so I was out in Thailand, and on the Thai full moon, I had a psychotic break from reality. Now, that's what they'd call it in in the psychiatric ward, is where I ended up. But to me, it was a huge spiritual awakening. And if I just rewind a little bit, I had been interested in the metaphysical, and I'm talking law of attraction, I'm talking Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer. I was reading Course in Miracles, and anything that I could get my hands on, because I realized that there was this beautiful big energy operating reality. Plus, when I was a teenager, my mum had a major breakdown, and instead of going through the psychiatric path, which we have some medical trauma in our family due to a schizophrenic doctor. But okay, I'm jumping all over the map. But needless to say, my mother went on a spiritual journey, and she filled this bookcase full of books. And these books changed the way I saw reality. They made me realize that actually we are hugely powerful, that we're channels for love, that fear is a block, blah, blah, blah. So if you just try to keep up with me, I was reading all these books. I was learning about law of attraction, metaphysical faith, connection with a higher power. But I was also partying. I was also drinking, smoking, taking party drugs, I think. But if anyone sees this, it was an accident. So everything was very mixed up. So by the time I got to Thailand and I experienced the poverty in the world in India, it was very, very overwhelming to experience such poverty. It was, the whole existential angst thing hit me so hard. I was like, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. And it was very depressing and blah, blah, blah. So I had this spiritual awakening / psychiatric break from reality, and everything came crumbling down. And my mum had to come out and get me. Now, this was such a monumental story, and I tell it through comedy as well. So this isn't a sort of big reveal. I've worked a lot on this. My mum came out and got me and took me back to England, and I was sectioned against my will. So that's committed against my will under the Mental Health Act. And I spent a couple of months in the psychiatric ward, and it was terrible. Like, everybody thought, the doctors didn't know if I was brain damaged. They didn't know if I'd come back from that. I mean, it was really scary for my family, and I blasted, a great hole in the experience of my family, So I thought I was going to be a famous rapper and save the world with my rap album in the hospital. I was having huge visions, huge everything, all this grandiose stuff. But when I came out of hospital and I managed to come back down to earth and wake up one day and realize I wasn't going to be a famous rapper and save the world. I wasn't Jesus reincarnated after all. And I had completely messed up my life, and I was only 19. So I hit a huge depression. I was incredibly ashamed of myself. I didn't want to see anyone. I was just like, no, I can't see anyone. This is too much. And this is a classic self-stigma. Something's wrong with me. The psychiatric treatment, they wanted me to stay on medication forever. They wanted to sort of diagnose me with something. But really what I'd had was so life-changing in terms of a spiritual experience, and humbling, right? Humiliating. It leveled me. And so I spent the next 10 years running from myself. And I tried everything I could to be the best person in the world that I could be. I did geographicals, I went traveling, I got jobs in youth work and youth offending and care work, and I tried to do comedy and I wanted to share these stories from the stage, but I hadn't dealt with anything inside of myself. I hadn't dealt with all the ways that I rejected myself. And I was running on beliefs that were, created through traumatic experiences in childhood, through growing up with traumatized parents. I was running on the belief that I was too much, that I wasn't good enough, and that I was unlovable. Essentially, I believed at a core level I was unlovable. And to get love, I had to only show up a certain way. And it was absolutely exhausting. I couldn't keep an intimate relationship past 2 years. I struggled with my identity. I struggled with just feeling okay in the world. And I struggled with my addiction. Every time I tried for 10 years, I'm going to put it down, but I would pick it up. And I just couldn't live with myself. And by the age of 29, and I know you're going to look at me and think, Lizzie, you can't be older than 30. And I am 45. But thank you for noticing. So sidetracked. Yeah, so at the age of 29, I was in Morocco doing another geographical, thinking I would go and work with children. And I actually did 1 week with children, and the other 2 months I spent kind of in a depressive hole. And there was one pivotal moment that really spoke to me. I was at the end, I was in Essaouira, which is the Windy City, and it's a coastal city. And they have those rocks that stop the tide or something. And I was sitting out there at the end of the rocks, and there was this young boy, he must have been 10 years old, and he had a bag of glue, and he was sniffing the glue, and he was just, he had the scabs on his face, he had like dusty body, only just shorts on, and he was just laughing manically and hysterically because he was so high, and we were just looking at each other. And I'd gone there because I was so desperate to do something of meaning with my life, something service-driven, that I saw in that moment that I could not even help him. Not that it's a lot to help somebody who's addicted, I know, and especially, but I realized that how could I help anyone if I couldn't help myself? And that was a turning point for me. And that was when I surrendered and I asked for help in recovery. So my dad was in recovery at the time. He's been in recovery since he got the divorce through when I was very young. So that's a gift, right? A gift of desperation. So my dad said to me one day, he said, "Have you had enough?" And I said, "Yes." And I gave up, and I got into a 12-step program of recovery, and I started to work the steps, and I started to get some clean time. So that gave me all this space. So finally, I had the space to follow my dreams, to get well, to have a relationship with my higher power, to just make these dreams come true. And what are my dreams? What are my visions? We'll get to that. So let me continue with the story. So 2 years, right? 2 years into my recovery, a few women around me who are supporting me, who are mentoring me, they go, "Lizzie, what are you going to do with your life?" I hadn't done university. I hadn't enjoyed education at all. I'd struggled a lot at school, what with, I'd struggled a lot, and that's we won't go into that. So I found a course, or rather the course found me, and it was comedy writing and performance degree at Salford University, which is right in Manchester. And by hook or by crook, I got in and I did a 3-year program. And at the end of this 3-year program, I did a research performance project asking, can I use comedy as a therapeutic tool to smash the shame and stigma that I carry about my own experience of mental health and addiction? So if you can kind of imagine this is 10 years later, maybe even 11 or so years later, and I'm still not quite okay with the story. Yeah, I'm sharing it in my recovery community, but I'm not really sure what the story is to me. And through this process, I did a lot of research. Who's using comedy as a therapeutic tool, number one. And then I did a lot of research around what's it going to look like when I share my story, and how am I going to make the environment safe, and can I invite a load of the people that I know in my community that I know maybe have a shared similar understanding of what it's like to, lose your mind a little bit, right? Sorry about that sound in the background if it's bothering you. I told my story and I found ways to infuse jokes, because jokes and joke writing is very formulaic. There's lots of structures that you can use to create a setup and a punchline. So if you have a story, you can find moments within that story to create humor. But I didn't want it to just be like, hey, I did this, da 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 da. I actually wanted to bring people into an experience of feeling their own stories and their own lived experience of shame or whatever it was, and then find some humor, break the tension. And the process was really interesting because I thought I was going to die, honestly, while I was doing it. The shame that came up, the pain that I had to walk through, the experience of looking inwards with a light, that was an experience for sure. So I did this show. It seemed to snowball. The psychiatrists saw it and they said, can you come and perform that at the same place that I was sectioned at our mental health open day? That would help us. And then when I did it there, someone else said, can you come and help us train some of the people that work in the ward? And then somebody said, can you come and do it over here? So I realized it had a snowball effect. And simultaneously, after university, I started working for a charity, working on grassroots out in the recovery movement. And I was allowed to use this comedy degree and my creativity to create a course that I could share with people in recovery. And I was also doing a night in Manchester. We had a recovery bar. We did a comedy night there. It was very successful. It was always filled with really gorgeous people. And it was a fun, safe environment. And then I managed to sort of marry it all together. And I realized, look, if we can support and love anyone on stage while they're sharing their story, they'll do a better job. And if we're on stage and we're sharing our story with a view to be of service to people still struggling with the story, and we perform it from a place of wellness and ownership, then what we've got is a beautiful, safe container, like another place for comedy to exist. And fast forward, I moved to Canada. I trained as a therapist. That changed everything for me. So when I trained as a therapist, the whole first year was working on self. And the second and third years, we were their guinea pigs. And we got so much free therapy and we did so much work. And what it helped me with was to reclaim those parts of myself that I had cut off during difficult times in childhood, because I thought, oh no, I'm not allowed to be like that. My feelings hurt people. I can't be vulnerable. And then I claimed that back, and that changed how I showed up on stage. So now I could go on stage and I could be where I was actually at. I took away the need to be perfect, the need to impress anyone. I started playing with what it is I want to do and what it is I want to bring to the world. And it also added this extra amazingness to what I was doing. And I called it addictive comedy back then, and we rebranded as Hilarapy, because I wanted people to see that it wasn't just for people in addiction. It could be people recovering from anything. It's about ownership. And if we're honest, we're all struggling with some sort of addiction, whether it's, I don't need to list them, but whether it's food, shopping, gambling, sex, watching too much Netflix, scrolling on your phone. These are the things that take us out of being present. And all of us struggle with that. And recovery is about being present and being in connection. And that's really the key. When I was not, when I was out there without doing this, I was disconnected. I was disconnected from myself. I was disconnected from my higher power, and I was disconnected from everyone else. And I wanted to do comedy, but when I went into the comedy clubs, I was disconnected. I didn't trust anything, nothing. And what I've found through this journey is that I've been able to reclaim parts of myself and then share that with the world. So if you've got this far, thank you so much. I have a vision, okay? I want to share with you my vision. My vision is, I'm going to tell you what I see energetically, and that's lots of people gathering together, energetically wide open. And you know, if you know me, you know I'm talking about heart opened, mind opened, energy flowing through, seeing everyone as equal, everybody's energy in unison, acting as a positive force for light. What do I say? Force? Energy for light. This sort of togetherness, connection, being together, coming together. So creating movements of love, whatever that looks like. So Hilarapy to me represents comedy taught from a place of wellness. Now, what does it look like? Hilarapy comes in many different forms. So you can go to a Hilarapy show and you can see a Hilarapy performance, either by myself or the people who have done the course, or the series that we've got in production, and the many series that will follow all over the world. That's the vision. You can come to a workshop and just have a taster day of playing, connecting, some of the heartfelt stuff, and then a little bit of comedy from me, but behind the scenes, right? Less, so we're all together and connecting, and that the purpose of those is for you to leave with friends, and also we're all creating this beautiful container together. Also, it looks like courses. So some of these, okay, so I've got two kinds. One is the Hilarapy course. Now those are a little bit more like gold dust because they are place specific. But I do a container for small groups, and we move through transition together. So that's coaching, and that isn't about doing a show, but it does use the spectrum of skills that I've got, and we can create a beautiful experience of transition as we move through that as a group, again coming together. And everything is about connection. Everything that I do is for the purposes of coming together and unifying. And when I say connection, connecting with each other, yes, but also with self, also with higher power, so that we feel at ease in our connection and that we can go home and connect in our communities. And it is my vision that all these Hilarapists that come out the other end, they are going to go and shine their lights on their communities with their stories. And so it just becomes this beautiful, ongoing gift of recovery, visibility, ownership, laughter, love, joy, and unity. So, if you're interested in healing with humour, I highly recommend it, and I hope to see you and maybe meet you one day. Thank you very much.